So happy to have you here, and we're going to talk about awesomeness, shared values, and how to actually walk the talk. So if you could just start with telling a little bit about who you are and what you do.
So when I think about who I am and what I do, I'm very lucky that they both correlate. So when I think about myself as an individual, I'm passionate about sustainability and innovation. And I've had the privilege over the last 20 years of working in that space, helping startups scale, but also helping large corporates go through what I call a twin transformation. So how can you be both sustainable and profitable? And if you think about either one of those very complex objectives to achieve, and imagine as a leader having to do them together, it's really a time for opportunity to drive that outcome and to lead by example. And that's what I would like for us to discuss today.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to my mind listening is like, why? Because I think that's the more interesting. So why are you actually passionate and interested about those things?
So I grew up on a farm. And so you always lived with harmony around your surroundings because you live off the land. And so if the land doesn't survive, you don't either. And you never appreciate that growing up. It was kind of like you'd get up at 5:30 in the morning, you'd work the land. And so it was part of your day-to-day. And then when I entered the corporate world, it was quite staggering to see how certain companies just didn't believe in that. It was, let's make money at the expense of our environment, not in harmony with the environment. And so joining AWS was about finding a company that has a vision for the planet, not just for profit, but also to see how can success and scale bring broad responsibility, which is one of our leadership principles. And it's very powerful to see how through partners like yourself, we're able to achieve that for our joint end customers.
Yeah. That's really true. But I think let's dig even one layer deeper, because it's not like you're not British. I can hear that from your accent. So what do you think about the culture that because we're going to talk about corporate culture, but from the culture you are born out of and biased by birth by, has that any meaning or relevance to who you are and where you are today?
Yeah, so I whilst I have a British passport, I'm South African through and through.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of being South African. In spite of the challenges in the country, the culture is very much centered around harmony. So we have this saying called Ubuntu, and it means I am because we are. So it's all about the collective, and it's about understanding how do your actions impact the wider community that you're part of, and what is it that you can learn from the wider community that can nurture you as a human being. And you have all these sayings about it takes a village to raise a child. If you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. Yeah. These are all African sayings which have real relevance to sustainability and the world of business today. So I love to take those narratives into my day-to-day and also expand upon it by learning from other cultures, like what we see in the Nordics: inclusive environment, balanced culture, balanced economy, caring about one another, nurturing one another. It's very inspiring to see this in play.
Yeah, and I think one of the really awesome things of being part of the Enfuce journey is to meet people like yourself who come with different views. Because if I look at the Nordic culture, I think the problem is that you always take things for granted. But it's also an awesome power. Like, we are born equal. And I know someone like, yeah, but we have differences. And yeah, but when you have seen other places, like, the equality is really strong, and also the sense of taking care of each other and making sure that everyone has a possibility to succeed. But then it's up to you how much work you put in. Because I was actually coming yesterday and talking with a person, and we're talking about the school system in Finland. And for us, even the university degrees are free, because we believe that education nourishes the culture of taking care of each other. And I think that's the good thing that we can bring, and that's why it's awesome to sit here. And I think those are the things that make us a bit different, because it's it's easy to talk the talk, but it's much harder to actually walk the talk. And for us, I have been having the opportunity to work with AWS since 2016, which was actually funny, because back in those days, no one had put any critical loads or processes run in cloud. And we were the first one. It's not because I thought it was cool or hype. I didn't have any money and I wanted to scale globally. So the cost efficiency ratio was really, really important. And after that, we've grown a lot. We've been able to scale, but we have had the opportunity to do a lot of good. So back in 2019, I believe, or 20, I have a bad memory, but we then were accepted to the climate pledge, because also a culture from Finns started. We are very compliance driven. And I think looking at the financial industry, especially the challenger ones who have been born during the past, let's say 5-6 years, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to money laundering, terrorist financing, and compliance issues. So I think one of the benefits that we have had is that we have a very strong sense of the governance side in ESG. So we started really heavily to focus on the environment, as we in Finland have the cleanest nature in the world, we have the cleanest air, etc. But we see a lot of challenges. It's changing a lot and not for the better. So building a company that actually can change, and it's been fun and at the same time a bit weird and confusing to work with a giant, because AWS was a giant already when we met, but it's been a really good, because in the end it's still people who work with people. So if you think about the people working with people, tell me a little bit about the culture you have, because we are like 120. We have, I think, 25 different nationalities, and culture is a challenge because you want it to be built, not to happen. So how is it at AWS?
So when I think about, first of all, there was one thing you said which really resonated, is around think big, start small, and then scale fast. And then that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah.
And it's I think the beauty of these partnerships from startups to large corporates is the fact that you get to go through that journey with an AWS. It gives you that scalability that you need, the exposure to think big. Yeah. But then to be honest with yourself around the fact that thinking big without any bias for action delivers no results.
Yeah.
And so what are those little embers we need to find that builds that business, and then keep fueling them so that they become a force for change? And
here I have to jump in and say, I think one of the really important early stage things that we did with AWS was that you were interested and gave time to us to make sure that the architecture we have is world leading. So again, we talk about people's data and people's money. So how it's architecture for high availability. And I think that's also, again, looking at some peers who have outage problems, who are not cloud native by birth. I think that has also been a huge advantage for us to have had that, and still have, but had that already in the early days. So it wasn't like, oh, you're too small, we don't care. It was like, this is what we want to do. We want to be first. Are you interested? Yes, we are. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you said earlier around culture as well, to that point, yes, around culture is not what you say, it's what you do. Yeah. It's how you feel on a Sunday night, yeah, before the Monday morning. Are you anxious? Yes. Do you feel like you're going to an environment where you'll be underperforming or you'll be excluded in any way? If culture is creating an environment where employees on a Sunday night feel excited about the next week, and truly empowered, inclusive environment where you can be the best version of yourself. And that is what a leadership role is. So leadership creates that. You create an environment in your business, not the culture per se, the rules on the wall. Mm. That's just verbiage. Yeah. But it's the leader's example that then cascades into the culture, which cascades to the employees, and then that's where the results come from. In the words of Peter Drucker, culture will always eat strategy for breakfast.
Always.
So, and I think this is the beauty of where cultures combine. It's more than the sum of its parts. So you have your leadership principles that we spoke about earlier. 4 of those are also in our leadership principles. And so it's not the number that you have, whether you have 16 or 4 or 1. Yeah. It's the fact that you have something codified that you truly believe in and that you use to build the business around. Discipline comes from, what do you do when no one is looking? Yes. What does that activity entail? And if you're customer obsessed, which you are, you're always thinking about, what can I do in the time I have to deliver the most results? Frugality, optimal use of resources, time being the most precious of them all. And so how do we ensure that our customer is always at the front of that focus, and then work backwards from that customer? And also when we look at our customers, is to ask ourselves, how big can we make what they're working on? potentially affecting positive change in the world. Yes, there's a lot of challenges out there, and we have to acknowledge them. We shouldn't be living in delusions, thinking everything is perfect. But then again, the world's always faced these catastrophes and overcome their own worst version of themselves to become a better version, because good leaders inspire bold action, which then drives positive change.
Yeah, I truly believe that. I mean, it's actually, if I look at my own wants and desires of being part of Enfuce, first of all, because I have never worked at one place this long. So I'm a builder. So it's taken me around 4 to 5 years to, start something, build it, and then hand it over. I've been at Enfuce now for almost 8 years since the idea was born. And it's still early days, so it's awesome to be part of really building and scaling. But I think the things that really make me happy, of course, the customers that we can help. And as you said, time is crucial. So where do we spend the time? But the things that we have been able to do to make the world a better place by doing the things we do exceptionally well. And one example is, for example, when Russia attacked Ukraine and invaded, we could see increase of refugees. Of course, the male had to stay, and the women and children and old people left. And we could see a refugee crisis starting to evolve. And we were sitting down like, what can we do? What can we do with the things we do? And then Visa called us and said that they have a player in France, Welcome Place, who are about to, they want to help refugees and help Red Cross issue relief funds. Because currently people need to queue, get money, and always when you have physical money, it's a challenge, because it feeds human trafficking, fraud, all the bad things. And then they were like, we're sorry that it comes so late. It was like end of November, but we would need to get the plastic cards in the hands of the refugees by the 23rd of December. And we were like, yeah, but that's a lot of time. And then we were like, yeah, we're in, let's do it. And then when you go to the team who does awesomeness at every day together, and then you put the possibility to prove that we can actually make things better for individuals, that made me really proud. And we had the cards in the hands of refugees before deadline, and then they could get, because what it did is it gave them dignity in a horrible position when you have had to flee and you are depending on others' charity. You don't have to queue with paper slips or queue for money, but you get a payment card, so you can buy the necessities in a secure manner. And it might seem like a small thing for us who are like in the everyday life, we buy and pay whatever, and we talk like, do you have Apple Pay or whatever. But I think those are the things that really make me proud. Not just what we did, but what it made the company. We were proud together. I think those are the things, but it's fun also to work together on different projects, like we did with AWS in 2019 when we launched My Carbon Action, the CO2 footprint calculator. We worked on that at Slush together, and then we utilized that when we do our own CO2 emission calculations, and it's all about transparency. But it's great to work with like-minded, and then the scale doesn't matter. Like if you're small or big, as long as you get shit done, like we say at Enfuce. I think that's the important thing.
Yeah, it's I think touching on dignity, the role that technology can play to enable that. I was recently in South Africa where we opened up a digital skills center, the first one outside the United States. And I went in there because I wanted to see what does it actually mean to have the skills center in Cape Town. And there was a lady that came up to me and said, "What brings you here today?" And she was a member of the public. And I said, "Well, I'm here to learn about the cloud." I didn't wear any Amazon livery, so she assumed I was just a member of the public. And I explained to her I'm looking to learn about the cloud and get certified, which I was. Yeah. And she said, "My community sponsored me today to come to this place to better understand how the process works and then I'm going to go back to my community to debrief them on what the opportunities are. And I didn't quite understand what you meant by that. So I asked, what do you mean sponsored you? She's like, we didn't have the money for transport. So we all clubbed money together to sponsor her to travel to the venue, which it's only 20 kilometers away. But in my world, that's very doable. In her world, living on less than $1 a day, it's the impossible.
Yes.
And the next question she asked me, I could answer, but I didn't understand it. And the question was, at what point did we learn about how we're going to positively impact the environment? So she was there to learn about technology and the connection that it has with the environment. So why is someone who's not aware of where the next meal is going to come from thinking about the environment? It ties back to our earlier story around culture, thinking about not just yourself, but your impact on everything around you. In finance, we talk about double materiality, the impact you have on the environment and the impact the environment has on your business. But from a cultural point of view, this individual had that thinking in place already. And that was the moment at which one of our leadership principles really made sense to me, which is success and scale brings broad responsibility. It's about representing the underrepresented, right? Those who are truly the have-nots in life, of which there are billions on this planet. And whilst we're in a position of leadership and responsibility, we're not just thinking about our customers, we're also thinking about every citizen on this planet. That's what you were thinking. Those refugees were not your customer, but you had a responsibility towards them because you felt compelled. You have the ability to affect change. Let's lean in and do something about it. Take ownership and showcase humanity in someone's most desperate time. So I think, thank you on behalf of that individual who you may never know. They don't know who you are. They will never meet you. But you made a material difference. You gave them hope in a time when things were very, very complex and still are very complex.